the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from USA Today for Thursday, June the 4th, 2026. Your readers today,
Jim Duffy
and Ken Drost. And opening the front section, the news. Trump's endorsement win streak ends in Iowa. Philip M. Bailey and Terry Collins of USA Today co-wrote the following article. President Donald Trump's winning streak in Republican primaries screeched to a halt as his preferred candidate fell to a novice in the Iowa Republican primary for governor. Other headline-grabbing results from the six-state primary date, June 2nd, included Democrats nominating a former wheelchair basketball gold medalist for Senate and a Native American female governor, which would be a first in U.S. history. But the biggest state to hold an election did not answer the questions everybody wanted to know. Will two TV stars turned first-time candidates running as Republicans in California make it to the general election? Now, California is slowly counting the votes in its closely watched gubernatorial contest, with early results showing Republican Steve Hilton and Democrat Xavier Becerra at the top of the heap. The first time I've run for office, over 1 million people and rising voted for me to take this incredible state in a new direction, Hilton told supporters, with a theme of change is coming at his campaign party in Huntington Beach. With roughly half of the votes counted by 2 a.m. Eastern Time on June the 3rd, Hilton, former Fox News commentator, endorsed by Trump, led with about 27%, followed by Becerra, a former Biden administration official, at roughly 26%. Those results remained the same by 9 a.m. Eastern Time. The California dream is alive tonight, Becerra told supporters. Now, Democrat Tom Steyer, a billionaire climate activist who jousted with Becerra in the campaign's final weeks, held steady at about 20%, followed by Republican Chad Bianco with 11%. We're going to wait until every ballot is counted, Steyer said at his campaign party in San Francisco. We're going to give democracy time to work. And in Los Angeles, former The Hills personality Spencer Pratt, another Republican recipient of Trump's blessing, was in second place in the mayoral race. But, like the governor's contest, the race too close to call. In New Jersey, Democrats had a 4-person primary to decide who best to take on Republican Representative Tom Keene, who hasn't been seen on Capitol Hill since early March. So here are the major takeaways from the June 2nd battles across the country. Only the top 2 vote-getters in the Golden State's nonpartisan jungle primary advanced to the general election this fall. And early on during the governor's race, Democrats were worried about being shut out. Early polling showed Hilton and fellow Republican Chad Bianco leading the pack, with the state's liberal majority split among a large crop of Democratic contenders to succeed Governor Gavin Newsom, who is term limited. But that changed in the final stretch of the campaign, as Becerra emerged as the leader in the polls after former Representative Eric Swalwell departed from the race in April because of allegations of sexual assault and misconduct, which he denies. Becerra looks very likely to finish in the top 2. And while Steyer may not, there's a possibility he could break through and lock out the Republicans, as some political observers suggest. Now, that's because many uncertain Democratic voters waited to cast their ballots until Election Day rather than mail in their vote early, which could create a red mirage where a GOP candidate takes an early lead that subsides as later ballots arrive. But David McEwen, a political science professor at Sonoma State, says Hilton has the staying power to advance to November's election, likely leaving Steyer on the sidelines. There were 7 main Democratic candidates in a very blue state, with 2 GOP candidates still in contention, McEwen said, suggesting that low-polling candidates who remain in the primary hurt Steyer's chances by splitting the vote. It's simple math. GOP voters don't flee. Now, LA's base avoids embarrassment. Incumbent Democratic Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass is going to advance to the November general election, most likely against Republican Spencer Pratt, a reality TV star who was in second place with 29% of the votes, with just over half of the vote counted. Bass led with 37% of the vote. His lead has narrowed by 4 percentage points. I'm sorry, her lead has narrowed by 4 percentage points, with 63% of the votes in by 9 a.m. Eastern Time on June the 3rd. We know what a city we have, what a city we can be. Tomorrow begins the second half of this journey, Bass told her boisterous supporters in Los Angeles after advancing past the primary. Progressive Democratic Socialist LA Councilwoman Nithya Raman was trailing in third at 22%. Now, Bass had appeared to be at some risk of an upset loss because of her low approval ratings. Pratt told reporters at his campaign party, "She knows it's on. I hope she's ready." So is the GOP on the defense in Iowa? In recent elections, Iowa has moved from a swing state to a reliably Republican state. But the retirement of Senator Joni Ernst and voter anxiety over Trump's trade wars have made Iowa Republicans unusually nervous. Forecasters have rated the 2026 Hawkeye State Senate race as competitive now that voters set the general election table with Democratic State Representative John Turek facing Republican U.S. Representative Ashley Hinson. Turek, a 2-time Paralympic gold medalist, drew national attention as a self-described prairie populist with an inspiring biography as a Paralympian, born with spina bifida because of his father's Agent Orange exposure during the Vietnam War. Hinson, a third-term congresswoman, sailed through the Republican primary with the help of Trump's endorsement, saying she would be the president's top ally if elected to the Senate. But she's also begun a pivot to the political center, emphasizing in a statement to USA Today Network, she will fight to make life more affordable. Hinson regularly highlights her support for Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill that included tax cuts on tips and overtime pay. Now, Democrats are expected to campaign against Hinson by spotlighting the ill effects of the Trump administration's trade policies on Iowa agriculture. Zach Lahn prevails in Iowa. Republican businesswoman Zach Lahn, who entered the Iowa primary race for governor as a virtual unknown, stunned presumed favorite U.S. Representative Randy Feenstra to win the party's nomination, CNN and Decision Desk HQ reported. Although Republican President Donald Trump endorsed Feenstra in the final days of the race, it was not enough to propel him across the finish line as he struggled to win over grassroots supporters and consolidate the field. The Associated Press called the race for Lahn at 11:50 p.m. local time, but Feenstra conceded much earlier. Lahn will face Democratic State Auditor Rob Sand, who ran unopposed. His toss-up in Jersey. Now, where in the world is Representative Tom Keene Jr.? That's been the question swirling in some New Jersey voters' minds after the GOP congressman's nearly 3-month absence from Capitol Hill because of an undisclosed health matter. I will transition from virtual work to in-person work within a matter of weeks, Keene said in a statement June 2nd. Trump said in a social media post that Keene, who's age 57, has missed more than 100 votes, is working tirelessly for New Jersey. Democrat Rebecca Bennett, 39, retired Navy helicopter pilot, came out on top in the four-way primary to challenge Keene, son of a former New Jersey Governor Tom Keene Sr., last November. The Garden State's 7th Congressional District, nestled along the northwestern Delaware River border with Pennsylvania, is one of the crucial toss-up contests in the 2026 midterms. And finally, historic showdown in New Mexico. Former Interior Secretary Deb Haaland sailed to the Democratic nomination for New Mexico governor, setting up what could be a history-making election this fall. The former Congresswoman, 65, would be the first Native American woman to lead a state if she prevails over Rio Rancho Mayor Greg Hull in November. She has already broken barriers as the first Native American woman elected to Congress in 2018 and the first Indigenous member of the cabinet. Haaland started running almost immediately after leaving the Biden administration in 2025, leaning on her fundraising network and a progressive resume. She pledged at the outset to take on the state's significant problems around crime, addiction, and education. A Wallet Hub study last year showed New Mexico ranked last nationwide in math and reading test scores. Haaland and Trump are likely to tussle over Trump, but also their policy differences on what to do with a boom in tax revenue, thanks largely to surging oil prices caused by the war with Iran. New Mexico is the country's second largest oil-producing state after Texas, and state officials estimated earlier this year the war would inject an additional $850 million into its tax revenue before the budget year ends in June, according to the Associated Press.
Alabama can keep disputed vote map. Lines favor the GOP in the cut majority black district. From Maureen Gropp of USA Today. The state Supreme Court has ruled that Alabama may use a congressional map that had been determined to have intentionally discriminated against black voters. The conservative court's latest redistricting decision that benefits Republican efforts to hold on to a narrow U.S. House majority in the midterm elections. The decision, June 2nd, reinforces how difficult, if not impossible, it will be for racial minorities to challenge election maps after the High Court significantly weakened the Voting Rights Act in April. In an unsigned opinion that was opposed by the court's 3 liberal justices, the majority paused a lower court's ruling that had blocked Alabama from using a disputed map. The map, passed by the GOP-controlled legislature in 2023, has only one district with a significant black population, instead of the 2 districts that were included in a map the lower court had directed the state to use. The Republican preferred map that 3-judge panel said was tainted by intentional race-based discrimination. We conducted a searching review of extensive undisputed evidence from legislators and a legislature and could not understand the 2023 plan as anything other than an intentional effort to dilute votes based on race, the panel wrote. We concluded that if this record did not rebut the strong presumption of legislative good faith, we doubted the presumption is ever rebuttable. But the Supreme Court said the panel wrongly interpreted Alabama's disagreement with the lower court's initial ruling against the map as proof of discriminatory intent. The majority also said the panel should not have blocked the map so close to an election because states are free to decide for themselves whether last-minute changes to an election are in their best interests. In a dissent joined by her 2 liberal colleagues, Justice Sonia Sotomayor said the majority's decision debases the democratic process by upending Alabama's entire election in the name of permitting Alabama to discriminate against black Alabamians. Intentional discrimination is the new standard the Supreme Court set in its April decision, Louisiana versus Kelly, for evaluating whether the voting power of racial minorities has been unfairly restricted. The Trump administration backed Alabama's argument that the lower court's ruling defied Louisiana versus Kelly and the Supreme Court should intervene. Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall said the three-judge panel strained to find racial bias while overlooking numerous lawful explanations for the district lines, such as keeping similar communities together in the same districts and preventing two incumbents from having to run against each other. Kelly vindicates Alabama's position, Marshall wrote in the state's emergency appeal. Yet the district court decided in 1 week that Kelly changed nothing. In the majority's opinion, throwing out a Louisiana map for relying too heavily on race to sort voters, Justice Samuel Alito wrote that the Voting Rights Act requires evidence giving rise to a strong inference of an intentional discrimination. It's not enough, he said, that a map fails to provide a sufficient number of majority-minority districts. The new interpretation of the Voting Rights Act prompted several southern states to redraw congressional maps to eliminate minority-heavy districts, even when voting on this year's candidates had already begun. After issuing its decision, the court expedited finalizing the ruling to help Louisiana quickly impose a new map. And the justices directed the three-judge panel in Alabama to reconsider its 2025 rejection of the GOP preferred map, resulting in a new rejection in May that the state immediately appealed to the High Court. In response, NAACP General Counsel Kristen Clark said the Supreme Court is stripping black voters of power and voice at a speed that would put Jim Crow jurists to shame. Our message to communities remains the same. The best way to express dissent is by showing up at the ballot box this election season, Clark said in a statement. The state's map has been in contention since Alabama lawmakers drew new boundaries after the 2020 census that included one district out of 7 with a majority black electorate. African Americans accounted for more than a quarter of the state's overall population.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:17.
Continuing, in 2023, the Supreme Court unexpectedly ruled against the state and rejected the map as a violation of the Voting Rights Act. The map the legislature passed in response to that decision is the subject of the latest ruling. In other redistricting decisions this year, not tied to the changes in the Voting Rights Act, the court allowed Texas to use the map drawn to help the GOP pick up as many as 5 additional seats in the U.S. House. The justice has also allowed California to use a map that could send 5 additional Democrats to Congress. The court declined to intervene after Virginia's Supreme Court blocked a new map designed to elect 4 more Democrats from the state.
July 4th fireworks show will set a world record. Fireworks celebrating the United States 250th anniversary. Carissa Waddick of USA Today writes, a rainbow of colors will burst over Washington, D.C. on July the 4th in what organizers say will be the largest fireworks show the world has ever seen. For 40 minutes, flares of light will sweep across the sky above the National Mall. The explosives will launch from 10 locations, including 8 barges in the Potomac River and several spots in West Potomac Park. They'll also line the reflecting pool, creating a runway-like stream of pops, crackles, and fizzes, framing the Lincoln Memorial. The capital city's typical Independence Day show lasts about 18 minutes and includes some 10,000 pyrotechnics. This year's 250th anniversary celebration will use more than 860,000. No matter how many times I watch through it, I still see things that I didn't see the first time. Jason Farrell, one of the show's designers, told USA Today during a recent visit to the Newcastle facility where the show is being put together. Freedom 250, a White House-backed nonprofit planning the milestone celebration, tapped the sixth-generation family-run company Pyrotechnico to develop this dazzling spectacle. The only request they received? Beat the Philippines' 2016 record for the largest display in history. USA Today got a behind-the-scenes look at the show and talked with Pyrotechnico about what goes into putting on an extravaganza display. Tucked away on an assuming back road, surrounded by acres of grassy expanse and residential homes, Pyrotechnico's Newcastle facility houses hundreds of thousands of pounds of explosives. It is one of 13 locations across the company, locations the company operates across the country. Light poles scattered around the property are more than a half-century old. The U.S. government installed these during World War II, when Pyrotechnico transitioned its production to create flares for the war effort. In white and blue shipping containers, cardboard boxes filled with different fireworks, they're all stacked neatly. Michael Fox, Vice President of Operations at Pyrotechnico, has spent more than 40 years ensuring every piece is accounted for. On a particularly sunny recent Tuesday afternoon, he and employee Aaron Trautman stood in a small building packing and labeling fireworks for an upcoming July 4th show in Raleigh, North Carolina. It is one of the roughly 700 shows the company will put on for small towns and private groups during the weekend of celebrations. Fox and Trautman picked up egg-sharpened 4-inch and 6-inch shells. Each piece passes through at least 8 sets of hands before it launches into the air, according to Fox. The duo placed labels on each piece with information about its exact location in the show. Eventually, they'll all get hooked up to igniters and computer wires. Controllers will be able to set them off with the push of a button. Once one show is packed and ready, they begin the next. Soon they're going to start the same process to package and load Washington's fireworks show into semi-trucks. To get a minute, it's hours, Fox said. For Farrell, the first wow moment creating the July 4th show came just a few weeks into the planning when his laptop unexpectedly crashed. He'd used the machine to design displays for the Super Bowl, Formula One, Las Vegas Grand Prix, and New Year's Eve, among other major events. But this time, it couldn't handle what he had in mind. This opens any other show we've ever done. And it will not open this show, Farrell said with a laugh. That was about 6 months ago. He and a team of other designers at Pyrotechnico brainstormed how they would dazzle those gathered on the mall and the millions expected to watch on TV. They decided on a panorama of fireworks sweeping over some of the city's most iconic monuments. Each of the 10 locations would blast off about the same amount of pyrotechnics as a typical 4th of July show in a mid-sized city. Breaking a record is incredibly important, but what we really want to do is to have people walk away believing they saw the best fireworks display of their lives, according to Stephen Vitale, CEO. Next, they handpicked rockets, candles, and fountains, choosing some from China, Italy, and Spain that few people in the U.S. have seen. Early renderings show some of the fireworks cascading like a water sprinkler, others moving and bursting in the sky in strange patterns. Designers paired those larger shells with smaller features, closer to the ground to give viewers multiple spots to look at during the lengthy show. And they timed everything to flow with music. Thousands of hours went into the production and the final version, and Vitale said the team will continue tweaking into the coming weeks. The work, he said, is about looking at a family on a picnic basket and the fascination they see in the lights and sound and the noise. Well, here's hoping the weather cooperates.
President chooses Polt for National Intelligence Post. Housing agency chief lacks experience in the field. From Joey Garrison and Josh Meyer of USA Today. President Trump appointed Bill Polt, the director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, as the new acting director of national intelligence, tapping a trusted ally with no previous experience in an intelligence role to replace Tulsi Gabbard. Trump announced the unusual pick of Polt in a June 2nd post on Truth Social. Trump said Polt, as the top federal official overseeing mortgage backers Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, has deep experience managing the most sensitive matters in America, the safety and soundness of the markets. Trump credited Polt with overseeing $10 trillion in combined assets and mortgages under Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the federal government's two mortgage finance firms. Polt is 38, is the grandson of the founder of one of the nation's largest home builders, Polt Homes, which was established in Detroit in the 1950s. Polt is the founder of the private equity firm Polt Capital Partners. In his new role, he will oversee the U.S. intelligence community, composed of 18 agencies, including the Central Intelligence Agency and National Security Agency. He's tasked with gathering data and information on security threats domestically and worldwide. When asked about the appointment, Republican Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas, chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, overseeing the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, said, "I have no observations on the matter." The ODNI under Gabbard underwent a major downsizing, with staff reduced or reassigned by 40% through an ODNI 2.0, an initiative launched last August. Gabbard was also accused of politicizing the office through the selective declassification of certain Russia-related intelligence assignments. Gabbard also raised alarms by participating in a controversial FBI seizure of 2020 election ballots in Georgia in January as part of the Trump administration's effort to prove election fraud in the election that Trump lost in the state to Democrat Joe Biden. Trump said Polt will remain in his position of director of the Federal Housing Agency, Finance Agency, and chairman of Freddie Mac. Polt has assumed a relatively high-profile and federal housing position that typically operates out of the spotlight. Critics say he has improperly used his position to go after Trump's adversaries, including Senate Intelligence Committee member Senator Adam Schiff, Democrat from California. In 2025, Polt accused Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook of claiming two of her mortgages as primary residence, leading Trump to fire Cook over mortgage fraud allegations. Cook, who sued Trump over her termination, remains on the board as litigation proceeds. Polt has also made criminal referrals targeting Schiff and New York Attorney General Letitia James over alleged homeowners insurance fraud. Schiff denied any wrongdoing in the mortgage fraud probe, which has stalled. Democrats lashed out at Trump this week for what they called the appointment of an unqualified political loyalist, saying the top intelligence position was created in the aftermath of the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks to make sure all 18 U.S. intelligence agencies are working together to protect national interests and the American people. Americans have already seen Mr. Polt use the powers of his office at the Federal Housing Finance Agency to pursue the president's grievances and lend credibility to dubious prosecutions of Trump's perceived political opponents, said Senator Mark Warner, Democrat from Virginia, the vice chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Elevating him to oversee the intelligence community makes clear that this president is not looking for an intelligence leader who will follow the facts or speak the truth to power, but rather someone who will be willing to shape intelligence around the president's wishes, regardless of the cost to the American people, according to Warner. Ned Price, a former CIA analyst and White House and State Department official in the Obama and Biden administrations also criticized Polk's appointment because of his eagerness to use his housing agency position to go after Trump's adversaries. The biggest news isn't that Trump is appointing someone without a national security background to a position that, by law, requires extensive experience.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:30.
Ned Price posted on X is that Polte earned Trump's trust by using mortgage records to pursue perceived political enemies. Now, this top henchman will have access to some of our most sensitive intelligence and exquisite capabilities, Price said. That's why this is so noteworthy and concerning. Gabbard, the outgoing director of national intelligence, announced in May that she was resigning her post as the nation's top intelligence official because of her husband's bone cancer diagnosis. Her resignation is effective June 30th. Serving as an acting director rather than being nominated to the full-time position, Polte will not require Senate confirmation. Trump has not said whether he will nominate a permanent replacement to lead the nation's intelligence community. The Government Accountability Office, an independent investigative agency of Congress, in December announced it was investigating whether Polte abused his position and government resources to accuse Trump adversaries, including Cook and James, of crimes. The probe followed a request from 8 Democratic senators. Polte helped spearhead a Trump proposal to create mortgages with 50-year terms in a push to allow more first-time home buyers to qualify to purchase homes. But the plan was quickly abandoned amid widespread criticism. Although Polte doesn't need Senate approval for his new position, his appointment could affect key legislation that the upper chamber is currently considering. Reauthorization of the powerful Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA. The statute enables U.S. spy agencies to gain access without a warrant to foreigners' texts, calls, and emails. And while it's designed to track enemy spies and terrorists, some lawmakers, including Republicans, say the communications of Americans can be swept up by the powerful surveillance tool also. Section 702 is set to expire on June 12th unless Congress intervenes. But Senator Ron Wyden, Democrat from Oregon, said Polte's appointment could and should complicate that already fraught process. At the ODNI, Polte will be intimately involved in overseeing FISA Section 702, where he could do vastly more damage, and the potential for abuse is nearly unlimited, according to Wyden. Republican Senator John Cronin of Texas told reporters on June 2nd, "I see no evidence of any qualifications for that job."
Trump says Iran vowed no nukes, but could reverse course. The president says the supreme leader is now involved in the talks. This is a joint article from Francesca Chambers, Christopher Kahn, and Michael Loria. President Donald Trump said in a podcast that Iran has agreed to never have a nuclear weapon, but said the regime could change its mind before the deal under discussion with the United States is finished. They can change their mind, but that was one of the things they've had to agree. They've agreed to that. That was the big thing, Trump said on Pod Force One with Miranda Devine. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has defied pressure from Trump to cease hostilities in Lebanon, particularly in Beirut suburbs, which the Israeli leader has threatened to bomb in its conflict with the Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah. Secretary of State Marco Rubio told the House Foreign Affairs Committee on June the 3rd that regime changes in Iran was not Trump's military objective, although the U.S. would welcome new leadership. We would love to see a change in Iran, but that they be governed by people. But that was not the goal of our mission, Rubio said in his testimony. The administration's aim was to destroy Iran's ability to threaten the region with an overwhelming number of missiles and drones, Rubio said. He argued that such a scenario would essentially have made Iran immune from external pressures to curb its nuclear ambitions. Trump has argued there has been a regime change in Iran because its former supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, and dozens of intelligence and military commanders have been killed in U.S. and Israeli airstrikes. But experts and opponents of the war have noted that the regime itself has not changed. Khamenei was replaced by his son, Mojtaba Khamenei. Now, Trump said that Mojtaba Khamenei is involved in peace negotiations and that he hopes to meet with the head of the Islamic Republic as talks progress. Oh, he's involved, absolutely, Trump said on the podcast. He added, I'd like to meet him. I'd love to meet everybody. I would like to meet him, and we probably will meet at some point, depending on how it all works out. The Supreme Leader has not been seen publicly since the airstrikes that started the war on February 28. Trump had said earlier that the younger Khamenei was an unacceptable choice to run Iran. On June the 2nd, Rubio said the Supreme Leader is increasingly engaging at some level, although all of his communications have been in writing and through intermediaries. Rubio told lawmakers June 2nd that negotiations were progressing after reports Tehran was suspending indirect talks with the U.S. over the Israeli military campaign in Lebanon. A long-term deal involving Iran's nuclear program probably would take months, Rubio added. He said the United States would lift its blockade on the Strait of Hormuz when Iran stopped interfering with tankers passing through the crucial trade zone. And finally, meanwhile, tensions heated up June 3rd after Iran attacked Kuwait and Bahrain for the latest U.S. strikes against the Islamic Republic. An Iranian attack damaged Kuwait's main airport, killing 1 and injuring at least 60, according to Kuwaiti authorities. American forces successfully defeated an Iranian missile and drone attacks targeting Kuwait, Bahrain, and civilian vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. None of the missiles launched at U.S. bases in the region ever hit their targets.
Pelley says 60 Minutes tried to force bias on his stories. The fired correspondent sees murder of the CBS program. From Taewan Moorman of USA Today. Longtime 60 Minutes correspondent Scott Pelley is speaking out and saying farewell after he was suddenly fired from the flagship program. Pelley shared a lengthy and eye-opening statement on an Instagram account early on June 3rd, which was reshared by the verified pages of his former colleagues. In the statement, shared across multiple images, he called the changes at the news program and at CBS heartbreaking. There has never been anything in America like 60 Minutes, Pelley began. The Sunday tradition is the most successful program of any kind in history. The journalist lauded the news institution's successes over the nearly 60 years of its existence. Pelley, who has been with the network for 37 years and on 60 Minutes for more than 20, said that when he and other colleagues began to take stewardship over from the Mike Wallace era, our responsibility was to expand energetically into a new age of media technology while preserving the values our audience expects. Now, the new owner of our network is casting this legend aside. The anchor's exit comes after a heated staff meeting, as reported by the New York Times and Status on June the 1st, in which he accused network editor-in-chief Barry Weiss of murdering the news program and laid into its newly hired executive producer, former tech journalist Nick Bilton. Weiss, who took up the role in 2025, has long been criticized for recent changes being made at CBS, while parent company Paramount has been accused, as Pelley put it, of attempting to curry a moment of favor with the Trump administration. He added, "The waste is heartbreaking." Pelley reflected on recent mass firings at the network, dubbed Black Thursday by the industry, reportedly including longtime 60 Minutes senior leaders such as executive producer Tanya Simon, executive editor Dragan Mihailovich, and correspondents Sharon Alfonsi and Cecilia Vega. In public statements, Alfonsi and Vega said their firings were politically motivated. He said they were good people who were silenced and cruelly fired without cause, he continued. They stood for fairness against the forces of political bias. They stood for professionalism against chaos. Pelley made eye-opening allegations about recent happenings at the network, including that new management has instructed me to inject falsehoods and bias into a politically sensitive story. He added, I've been told to include assertions that are unverified. To date, in every case, I have managed to ignore these instructions or refuse them. He also said that as of late, politicians have been invited to choose correspondents for interviews on the broadcast. He emphasized giving politicians control over 60 Minutes interviews is not how honest journalism is done. In one instance in which Pelley says new leadership wreaked havoc with incompetence and unprofessionalism, he alleged the news program came within 19 minutes of not airing at all. USA Today has reached out to CBS for comment. At 60 Minutes, we have fought harder than anyone knows to save the program that became an American icon, he wrote, before lamenting the collapse of values at the top. Concluding, Pelley thanked his colleagues, saying his heart was brimming with gratitude for their impact. I pray for a day when those people and their ideals are honored again, a day when sanity, competence, and courage return. CBS News terminated the correspondent 68 after more than 2 decades at 60 Minutes. USA Today understands leaving Pelley without severance or other benefits effective immediately. In a termination note obtained by USA Today, newly hired 60 Minutes executive Bilton told Pelley that he was hoping they could pave a path forward together following the misconduct, but said, you made it clear that you are not interested in such a path.
A New Jersey health official sues ICE detention center operators. Scott Fallon and Eduardo Cuevas of USA Today co-write the following article. New Jersey's health commissioner on June the 2nd sued the operators of a controversial federal immigrant detention center, saying that they barred health inspectors from critical areas of the facility. State Health Commissioner Raymond Washington said that when his team tried to inspect Newark's Delaney Hall in late May, they were only allowed access to the privately run U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement facility's food service area, according to the 18-page lawsuit filed in state superior court. The state is suing GEO Group, which owns and operates Delaney Hall, under an estimated 15-year, $1 billion federal contract. Delaney Hall has been at the center of the debate in New Jersey after President Trump's campaign promises to dramatically increase immigration enforcement across the U.S. Reports of labor and hunger strikes in late May over poor conditions at Delaney Hall, which has the capacity to house more than 1,000 people, drew protests outside the facility that resulted in clashes with police in recent days. Washington said he sent in the team after seeing complaints raised about crowding, poor ventilation, lack of medical care, unsanitary bathrooms, and other conditions at Delaney. Any facility housing people in New Jersey must meet basic standards under the law to prevent the spread of disease, keep food and water safe, and minimize health risks. Washington said in a statement, that includes Delaney Hall. Representatives for the GEO Group did not immediately respond to a request for comment. In a statement, the Department of Homeland Security, which includes ICE, called the lawsuit frivolous. ICE is committed to transparency, and Delaney Hall complies with all required state and local laws. The Department of Justice, which represents the federal government, declined to comment on the litigation. The state's lawsuit, filed by the state attorney general's office, said inspectors on May the 28th were not allowed to observe conditions in the medical unit, bathrooms, showers, or sleeping areas, or the facility's heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:45. Continuing, DHS said 4 state health department officials entered the facility around 11 a.m. on May 28th and inspected the food service department, including the kitchen, and they left at 12:30. The agency said it would continue to grant state and local inspectors access to the facility where appropriate. Now, DHS said ICE is regularly audited and inspected by external agencies, adding that all detainees get proper meals, quality water, blankets, medical treatment, and have opportunities to communicate with their family members and lawyers. The state health department routinely inspects medical facilities such as hospitals and nursing homes that it licenses, according to the lawsuit. It is also able to inspect other facilities, including a public or private place of detention, the lawsuit said. Governor Mike Sherrill, a Democrat, said that if GO Group had nothing to hide and that the conditions were as safe and sanitary as the company said and the Trump administration say, then there was no reason why health inspectors couldn't get full access to the building. The people of New Jersey deserve transparency and accountability, he said, the governor said in a statement, adding that she would use her office's full powers to advocate for detainees and their families. Sherrill and other state Democrats has called for Delaney Hall's closure.
Turning to the money section of USA Today, shoppers ditching favorite brands. Price increases leading to drops, study finds. From Betty Lynn Fisher of USA Today. Strained by tighter budgets and product price increases, more shoppers are willing to ditch their favorite brand for a cheaper alternative, a new study finds. In a survey of more than 1,000 Americans by DOS, 60% of shoppers said they have dropped a brand they were previously loyal to because of an uptick in price. USA Today was given an exclusive first look at the study. Rising prices appear to be changing not just how Americans spend, but who they're willing to spend with. Sebastian DeBoerweer, DOS Vice President of Business Development and Marketing, told USA Today. DOS products help businesses automate inventory management. Now, what price increases is too much for loyalty? Younger female and lower income shoppers were more willing to drop their brand loyalty, according to the survey results. 61% of Gen Z and millennials said they had dropped a brand compared to 58% of baby boomers and 57% of Gen Xers. Women, 62%, were more likely than men, 56%, to switch brands, while 62% of those earning less than $25,000 said they'd dropped a brand compared to 52% of those earning $100,000 or more. On average, a 16% price increase was enough to push shoppers away from their favorite brand, with the median being a 10% price hike. Baby boomers said they would switch to a cheaper brand because of a 12% increase, while Gen Z and millennials said it would take a 17% price increase for them to switch. Among those who switched from a brand they were loyal to, 76% made the switch on groceries, 41% for personal care, 39% for household goods, and 39% for dining out. After dropping the go-to brand, 53% of those surveyed said they switched to a generic version, while 52% said they went to a cheaper name brand, and 48% moved to a private label or store brand. 41% stopped buying the type of product altogether. In another study released earlier this year by the Carney Institute, shoppers also said they were choosing cheaper alternatives. 37% of respondents said they substituted for less expensive brands. And why are costs going up the most? Or where are costs going up the most? Shoppers surveyed said they were feeling the pain of inflation the most in the grocery category, with 82% citing that as a category with the biggest increases. 76% of respondents cited gas and fuel, while 46% said rising utility costs sparked the most sticker shock. 42% said dining out and takeout had increased most for them. Respondents also shared the parts of their budgets that they have cut back on in the past few months. The top category was dining out and takeout, which is 62%, followed by vacations or travel, 48%, and 47% cutting back on entertainment and concerts. 44% said they cut back on social outings and date nights, while 38% said they pulled back on both hobbies and personal interests in higher quality or healthier groceries. Overall, consumers are becoming significantly more intentional when it comes to their discretionary spending, according to the brewery.
Roommate culture spreading to the suburbs. As rents skyrocket, inquiries are booming. Andrea Requier of USA Today staff writes, from Bert and Ernie to Will and Grace, roommate situations in cities are so familiar, they've become ingrained in American pop culture. But now the housing affordability crisis is expanding roommate life far beyond the big cities, where many Americans start their young adult lives. An analysis from Spare Room, an online roommate search tool, shows that small cities are seeing more than double the number of users searching for roommates as in past years. Such inquiries are also booming in suburban areas and the commuter communities around bigger metros. Sharing is the most affordable way to rent. And yet, even roommates are migrating away from pricier cities and downtown areas in a bid to reduce living costs. The company said in a release accompanying the analysis, which looked at more than 16 million roommate searches in 2025 compared to the year before. The trend is pronounced in a few key areas around the community, including the suburban communities surrounding Dallas-Fort Worth. Roommate searches are up 145% in single-family dominated Rockwall and have roughly doubled in Tomball and Conroe. USA Today's interactive rent tracker shows that rental costs in the DFW metro have risen 15% since the pandemic. Around Atlanta, where prices are up 17% since, roommates searches are climbing in suburbs, including Dunwoody, Brookhaven, and Sandy Springs. The lifestyle offered in the suburban Sunbelt areas also may correspond with the rising number of people who find themselves sharing a home in their 40s, 50s, and beyond, priced out of home ownership and renting solo, Spare Room's release said. In an earlier report, Spare Room showed that roommates ages 45 and older made up roughly 1/10 of the overall market a decade ago. But now they account for nearly a quarter of it. For more on rental costs in many American metro areas and how those costs have changed over time, see USA Today's online rent tracker. But the outward shift from big cities isn't just a Sunbelt phenomenon. Around New York City, for example, the Coney Island section of Brooklyn, one of the farthest parts of the city from Manhattan, saw roommate searches up 106%. Inquiries for the Ronkonkoma area of Long Island were up 128%. As of 2023, a whopping 1/2 of all renters were cost-burdened, meaning they spend more than 30% of their income on housing and utilities. That includes the 27% who spend more than half of their income on those expenses.
With kids in school, retirement looks very different from Daniel Devise of USA Today. Retirement planning in America is largely focused on providing for the living expenses of retirees. What happens when you throw in a child? Americans are having children later in life, which means they are potentially more likely to retire before their kids have reached adulthood. More than 4 million school-age children live in households with a senior, according to KFF. I think it's a topic that's going to come up more and more, said Patrick Huey, a certified financial planner in Naples, Florida. You won't find much literature online about retiring with kids, but it's a topic worth exploring, retirement planners say, because your retirement might look very different when the plan includes school-age children. There are at least two distinct categories of retirees with dependent children. One group comprises parents who retire relatively young, perhaps because of a military job or financial windfall. Another group of parents have kids later in life, so their normal retirement date arrives before the kids have grown up. Either way, retiring with school-age children can be financially perilous. Doing it right can take years of planning. Lori Allen, a certified financial planner in Hermosa Beach, California, has a 2-year-old child. She's 43. Before the baby arrived, she had planned to go work optional sometime after age 55. Now, she's not so sure. Contemplating retirement with a kid at school really scared me in a way that I had not expected, Ellen said. Kelly Renner, a certified financial planner in Augusta, Georgia, works with couples in federal government jobs at nearby Fort Gordon. They often retire with school-age kids, and that requires preparation. The people I'm talking to, they started planning in their 20s. They're on track to retire in their 40s, and if they had kids, that's part of their plan, she said. Renner's typical clients have fully funded 529 college saving plans to cover their children's higher education expenses. They max out contributions to thrift savings plans, a government version of a 401k. They often have income from rental properties. All of that is to prepare them for a retirement that could last 40 or 50 years, including their children's college years. It doesn't matter how small the kids are, Ranner said. It's how much ever they're going to cost. If you think you might retire before your children reach adulthood, here are 5 questions to ask now. How will you pay for college? How will you pay for health insurance? When will you claim Social Security? Will you spend retirement savings on your kids? And have you consulted a financial planner?
You're listening to a reading of articles from USA Today for Thursday, June the 4th, 2026, on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We will return for more readings after the short break. Your readers today,
Jim Duffy
and Ken Drost.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of USA Today. Your readers are
Ken Drost.
and Jim Duffy. And turning to our sports page, Spurs are a cure for those sick of New York City bravado. This is from Nancy Armour, a columnist for USA Today. The NBA Finals hadn't even begun, and already the fixation with the New York Knicks is exhausting. Did you know this is their first trip to the Finals since 1999? Did you know they haven't lost in more than a month? Did you know they have the most famous fans in the world? Did you know tickets to games at Madison Square Garden cost more than a car? Stop! Fortunately for folks who are not Knicks fans, which is pretty much the rest of the country, New York's opponents in these finals are the San Antonio Spurs, who might just be the most down-to-earth team in the NBA. They're small market and worth about half what the Knicks are. Their nickname does not bring instant recognition. Their arena does not have name recognition in their own state, let alone the whole world. Their most famous fans are nuns, not celebrities. And while Victor Wembanyama is the undisputed future of the NBA, he's an unassuming superstar. Instead of hanging out with Kardashians, Wemby spent last offseason with monks. While not an actual alien, he is interested in outer space and can talk at length about it. He's responsible for an uptick in reading in San Antonio, for goodness sake. The Spurs are what you want in a championship team. The Knicks are what New York wants in a championship team. Every sport has at least one team that everyone else loves to hate. The Dallas Cowboys in the NFL, the New York Yankees in Major League Baseball, Duke in men's basketball. It's usually a byproduct of success, a toxic owner, or an arrogant fan base. In the Knicks case, it's a little bit of everything. Well, maybe not the success part, not lately at least, but the owner and the fan base more than make up for that. Longtime Knicks owner James Dolan is easily the worst owner in the NBA. With Dan Snyder having sold the Washington Commanders, he can make a case for worst owner in all of sports. He's picked fights with superfan Spike Lee and Knicks legend Charles Oakley. He provided cover for Isaiah Thomas after he was the subject of a sexual harassment lawsuit. Dolan treated his WNBA team like something he found on the bottom of his shoe. Dolan has also reportedly used surveillance technology to track those who are critical of him and ban them from Madison Square Garden in retaliation. Even Knicks fans hate the man. As for those fans, they're brash, they're loud, and let's be honest, they're a little arrogant. And that's just Timothy Chalamet. New Yorkers see New York as the center of the universe and don't have much use for anything outside the 5 boroughs. Maybe New Jersey, maybe. That kind of smugness is as annoying as a pebble in a shoe to people who aren't from New York. Since we can't take our irritation out on the city itself, its teams become the proxy. The Knicks, the Yankees, the Mets, the Rangers. Whoever they're playing becomes everyone else's second favorite team. Yes, I know I left out the Giants and the Jets. They're too pathetic to hate. And if it's the postseason, the loathing ratchets up to another level. Which brings us back to San Antonio. The Spurs are an incredibly likable team on their own. This is the franchise of David Robinson, Tim Duncan, and Greg Popovich. This is the franchise that showed it really is possible for people from all corners of the world to work together. This is the franchise that has Wemby, who is revolutionizing the game in real time while also being an utterly decent human. San Antonio's bandwagon would need extra room regardless of who the Spurs were facing in the finals. That they're playing the Knicks makes them America's team. Come on, Spurs. Do the rest of the country a solid. The last thing anyone needs is to give New York another reason to brag about itself.
Very good. Hurdle leaps to rescue a shining knight late. How's that for a confusing title? This is regarding the Stanley Cup Finals and a hockey player named Hurdle, Hertl. Mike Brame of USA Today writes, The Vegas Golden Knights are not the Montreal Canadiens or the Philadelphia Flyers or the Ottawa Senators. The Carolina Hurricanes faced their toughest opponents so far in the NHL playoffs June the 2nd and lost Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final 5-4 in a back-and-forth game. They blew a 2-0 lead. They fell behind 3-2 and twice tied the score before falling on Thomas Hertl's winning goal with 3 minutes and 24 seconds left in the third period. The Hurricanes, whose forechecking frustrates opponents, found the same difficulties getting out of the zone because of the Golden Knights' forecheck. We didn't handle pressure particularly well, Hurricanes coach Ron Brindamore said. The winners and losers of Game 1, a turnover-filled game that both coaches are going to have to address. The winners, Golden Knights forward Thomas Hertl. He went through a 29-game goal drought that carried from the regular season into the playoffs. But his winning goal, his fourth goal in the last 8 games, as he worked a give and go with Colton Sissons. We gave him some time, Tortorella said. Took a little time, but the time was getting short. Once he scored, his game kind of changed. He's come through at a very important time and has given up some consistent minutes. Hurricanes forward Nikolai Ehlers. Carolina signed the free agent to a 6-year deal averaging $8.5 million. He reinforced why in Game 1 with his speed and his shot. His goal, 25 seconds into the game, was the third fastest in the history of Game 1s of the Stanley Cup Final. He made a nice move on a breakaway goal to make it 2-0. Now, Golden Knights' Braden McNabb, he's known more for his shot blocking and physical play than his offense. But he had 3 assists for his first time in a playoff game to help lead the Golden Knights offense. He was a +3 and blocked 2 shots for good measure. So who were the losers? The Hurricanes' first line, Sebastian Aho, Andrei Svechnikov, and Seth Jarvis. They continue to struggle in the playoffs. Aho put the puck over the net in a chance in close, and Svechnikov fanned on a one-timer. They had one good shift in the third there, Brindamore said. Everybody has to play well if you're going to win at this time of year. Your best guys have to get on the score sheet. Now, the Hurricanes' power play, that entered the game at a paltry 12.5% and went 0 for 2 with not many looks. And finally, the goaltenders. Vegas's Carter Hart and Carolina's Frederik Andersen made, a few good saves, but they weren't their usual selves. Hart had a .852 save percentage, and Andersen was at 0.783. Coming into the games, they were at .94 and .932 respectively.
Side gigs. The NBA and WNBA's newest trend? Active players on the other side of the mic. From Danielle Lerner of USA Today. When the NBA Finals begin airing on ESPN this week, Golden State Warriors star Draymond Green will return to Inside the NBA as a guest analyst for Games 3 and 4, resuming a role he helped pioneer. In 2022, Green became the first active NBA player to make an in-season appearance as a television analyst, but he's no longer alone. While athletes in tennis and even the NFL have double-dipped in broadcasting and playing, the trend of active player contributors continues to gain steam in professional basketball. NBA players Kyle Lowry and Tyrese Halliburton joined Prime Video as athlete contributors. On the WNBA side, Kelsey Plum signed on as a player contributor for Prime. Sophie Cunningham is working as a studio analyst for USA Network, and Caitlin Clark made multiple appearances on NBC's studio show for NBA games. I think it's becoming more attractive because it gives players the opportunity to show the other side of their brains and not just a basketball playing side, Lowry said. It's a lot that goes into being a professional athlete, especially a basketball player. You have to continue to play basketball working on your craft, but you also got to watch the film, study it, etc. Also, having to explain what you're doing, how you are preparing yourself to the everyday fan is fun. Not all players are necessarily cut out for broadcasting. Amina Hussein, Prime Video's head of U.S. Sports on-air talent and development, said she keeps her ear to the streets to figure out which players want to be in media and can bring a unique perspective to the table. Folks that are authentic, that are genuine, that love the sport that they're talking about. And I have a no asshole policy, Hussein said. Just looking for genuinely good people that want to help grow, talk, and enjoy the sport and bring a different perspective. Previous broadcast experience is not a requirement, though it is a bonus. Cunningham, a guard for the Indiana Fever, previously served as a guest analyst on the Phoenix Suns pre- and post-game broadcast in 2022 and commented on college basketball for various networks. Jeff Benke, a USA Sports executive producer, said the primary reasons the network recruited Cunningham were her personality and recognizability. She says what's on her mind, and she is also passionate about the game of basketball, Benke said. I think anytime you can get that in the moment, on the field, on the racetrack, on the court, information, and personality weaved into a broadcast, it's a great thing. While fans are used to seeing retired players as talking heads on TV, active athletes are behind the scenes in the locker room every day and can draw from their current experiences to paint a picture. Lowry, who just completed his 20th NBA season, said taking the Prime gig was a no-brainer because it set him up for a smooth transition from playing to broadcasting whenever he's ready. Halliburton, meanwhile, is unsure whether his arrangement with Prime will continue next season when he returns to the court or whether he'll pursue a broadcaster career after retirement, but he's happy to have options. It's definitely a possibility, Halliburton said. I've had a lot of conversations about do I want to coach or whatever, but me at 26 years old, I'm sure my answer would be very different when I'm ready to give up or stop playing. So it's hard to say right now. Cunningham is a long way from retirement too, but she said she has broadcast aspirations right now. She's grateful for her opportunity with the USA Network and hopeful that more active players will become contributors. I think hopefully this opens up more for other players to do what they are passionate about and get your feet wet a little bit while you're still playing, Cunningham said. When the ball stops bouncing, you're setting yourself up, and I just think it's really cool that companies are starting to invest in us because they see us more than just basketball players.
Rory aims for Jack's place. Adam Schupak of Golf Week, part of the USA Today network, writes, Dublin, Ohio. 2 years ago, in April, the weekend before Rory McIlroy won the Masters to complete the career Grand Slam, McIlroy had lunch with Jack Nicklaus, and the six-time Green Jacket winner asked McIlroy how he intended to play Augusta National. You want all of it? McIlroy asked. Yeah, give it to me, shot for shot, Nicklaus answered. And so Rory went through it, shot for shot. Nicklaus recalled on June the 2nd, during a press conference ahead of the Memorial Tournament at Muirfield Village Golf Club, the club he founded in his hometown. And he said, what do you think? And I said, well, I wouldn't change a thing. I think it's exactly the way you should play. He varied from it one time. He varied from it on the third hole. He said if the pin was left, he was not going to drive it, but he would drive it every other time. Well, he drove it on Sunday, on that, and put it right at the base of the hill and made birdie. But he gave himself a chance to make more than that. But the birdie probably won the tournament for him that first year. Now this year, McIlroy joined Nicklaus in another exclusive club, becoming just the fourth player to repeat at the Masters. So once again, some advice from the Golden Bear came in handy after they bumped into each other on the practice tee on Thursday morning, just before Nicklaus hit the ceremonial opening tee shot as one of the 3 honorary starters to kick off the 90th Masters.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 1:15.
Continuing, I put my hands on his shoulders and I said to him, "No effing double bogeys," Nicklaus recalled. He did end up making last couple of rounds, but he didn't make any of the first 2 rounds. So I was very happy for Rory. I was delighted for him. I've been a big Rory fan. Now he's only got one thing left on his resume that he really needs to have, and that's to win here. So you tell him that he's got to do that. Nicklaus' stiff examination at Muirfield Village has been McIlroy's kryptonite. This week marks his 14th appearance here, and his best finish is a tie for 4th in 2016, one of the 5 top 10 finishes. But his 13 previous starts, the most starts in an event without a win in his PGA Tour career. So why hasn't McIlroy won at Jack's Place? So even Nicklaus is befuddled. Well, maybe because he hasn't asked me. I don't know, he said with a laugh. I think that this golf course is a golf course that really requires patience. I didn't design it for big hitters, didn't design it for short hitters. I didn't design it for the middle. I tried to design it so we could take care of everybody. Try to give a fair shake to every kind of player. And when you get that, you can't just stand up and just whack away at it on every hole. I tried that in my early years. I didn't do very well. McIlroy's failure to win the Memorial isn't for a lack of birdies or good driving of the ball. For being such a long golf course, I feel like it takes driver out of my hand a lot, which, I pride myself on that being one of my biggest weapons, McIlroy said. The fairways pinch and right around the spots where I would be finishing driver, so it frustrated me in a way that I feel like my biggest weapon is in some way neutralized here. So nevertheless, in the ShotLink era, McIlroy has averaged gaining plus 0.70 strokes off the tee, the 3rd highest average at the Memorial Tournament since 2003, minimum 20 rounds played. And he's averaged 4.27 birdies per round, the 5th highest of any player at this event since 2003. Last year, McIlroy skipped the Memorial, but he's back this week to try to check one of the few remaining boxes on his to-do list before his career is done. I haven't quite figured it out yet. It's frustrated me over my career, McIlroy said. I would say here and Tiger's event at Riviera, they're the 2 that I would love to win. I've been lucky enough to win at Bay Hill, but not while Arnold was alive. So I always thought it would be cool to win here and take that little walk up the hill off the 18th green and shake Jack's hand. Nicklaus created a memorial in the mold of the Masters, so perhaps all McIlroy needs to do is to follow Jack's advice from earlier this year. Play with a little more discipline and avoid the double bogeys. Hopefully, this is the week that I put it all together, McIlroy said.
Riviera, a golf magnet for Wee West. From Beth Ann Nichols of Golf Week and the USA Today Network. At the end of the Jerry West the Logo documentary, as the credits are rolling, McKenna West climbs into her grandfather's lap for a hug and a peck on the forehead. A tormented childhood made it difficult for the Lakers legend to say the words, "I love you," to those who filled his heart. But he did so with McKenna. As Johnny West made the steep climb from the driving range to the first tee at Riviera Country Club on the afternoon of May 31st, He reflected on what made his legendary father open up about an illustrious and complicated, often lonely life. The 2-hour documentary, which was released in April and is now streaming on Amazon Prime, began filming West on the eve of his 85th birthday. He died not long after, on June 12, 2024. He was in a different point of his life where he was more reflective, said Johnny, who works as director of pro personnel for the Golden State Warriors. And I think a lot of that naturally started when McKenna was born. I think there was a big change in him and how he viewed everything. Michelle Wie West's encore performance in the 81st U.S. Women's Open boils down to one thing: family. If I wasn't here, I wouldn't be playing, said Wie West of Riviera Country Club. After winning the U.S. Women's Open in 2014, Wie West's 10-year exemption was extended due to the birth of the couple's second child, Jagger Jerry Yun West, in October of 2024. Jerry West and family used to live on Capri Drive, the same road that leads to Riviera off Sunset Boulevard. Jerry, who at one point played off a +4 handicap, was a member at both Riviera and Bel Air Country Club. Johnny notes that for more than 40 years, West held the course record of 63 at Bel Air and still holds the back nine record of 28. Unbelievable hands, great putter, great chipper, said Johnny of his father's golf game. Could hit it far, could hit it both ways. From 2010 to 2013, the NBA Hall of Famer was the executive director of the Northern Trust Open at Riviera, calling it a highlight of his career, being able to raise money for the Los Angeles community that had given him so much. Before Wie and West were wed in August of 2019, they hosted a Ryder Cup-style match at Riviera for wedding guests. This week, dozens of family members will be out to watch a retired Wie West compete in the first U.S. Women's Open ever staged in the Los Angeles County. Johnny will be on the bag, and 5-year-old Kenna will continue her role as sports psychologist. Her best advice for Mom: if she gets nervous, take a drink of water. After a tough showing last month at the tournament she hosts, the Mizuho Americans Open, Wie West aims to follow her own advice. When Kenna plays in a tournament, I tell her it doesn't matter your results. I just want you to try hard and have a good attitude, said Wie West. There were times at Mizuho when I did not have a good attitude. Wie West admired her father-in-law's legendary disdain for losing and was inspired by his stories from the past. She once said she was shocked to learn that when Jerry West first joined the league, everyone in the NBA had a second job. Courtside tickets at Lakers games went for $7.50. She likened it to the work of the LPGA's 13 founders did more than 75 years ago when Patty Berg won the first U.S. Women's Open in 1946. The prize of $5,600 was issued in U.S. war bonds. The dynasty-building West battled bouts of depression throughout his life. He talked openly in the documentary about the difficult chapters of his life off the court, such as the death of his beloved older brother David in the Korean War, and the trauma of having his casket placed by the family's Christmas tree at his father's request. West suffered greatly at the hands of his father, and the solitary work of perfecting his jump shot provided a welcome escape and purpose. I feel like he was one of the first athletes who really openly talked about mental health, said Wie West. West's family was featured prominently throughout the film, along with many of basketball's all-time greats, such as Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, and Shaquille O'Neal, who considered the loyal, brilliant, and generous West a mentor, friend, and father figure. I've talked to so many people who have watched it, and they're like, don't say anything, but I cried so much, said Johnny. As Wie West worked on the range the May 31st afternoon, her mother, Bo, was by her side, watching closely. Her father, BJ, a retired professor, was back at the house, looking after the grandchildren. In many ways, Riviera marks a full-circle moment for Wie West, the one-time prodigy, who grew up carrying the weight of the women's game on her 6'1" frame. Maybe this is it, right? She said just before teeing off the first at Riviera. one last hurrah for the family.
Muhammad Ali's message on compassion hits home. Lani Ali, Muhammad's wife, writes this article as a special feature for USA Today. The world knew Muhammad Ali as the greatest, but those who were close to my husband understood his true greatness had very little to do with titles, fame, or boxing. It came from the way he treated people. As we mark the 10th anniversary of Muhammad's passing on June 3rd, calls to hear his voice of kindness and compassion are reverberating. Muhammad believed every person mattered. He had a remarkable ability to make people feel seen and cared for. Now today, while we may feel more connected through technology, we are becoming more disconnected as human beings. We can reach each other instantly, and yet loneliness, division, and distrust continue to grow. Too many people are struggling with isolation, anxiety, and a sense that genuine human connection is slipping away. In his first papal encyclical, Pope Leo XIV repeatedly emphasized the importance of compassion and prioritizing humanity over technology, entrusting an algorithm in practice with the power to select who is worthy or not, without anyone bearing responsibility for that judgment, is to hand over the task of redefining the boundaries of human possibilities, he wrote. When relying on AI and other technologies, injustice goes unnoticed, and compassion, mercy, forgiveness, understood not as mere appearances, but as real political actions, gradually disappearing from view. We are living in a culture where outrage is often rewarded over understanding. Many are becoming quicker to judge, slower to listen. Political, cultural, and religious differences are increasingly pulling us apart, separating us as families, communities, and as a nation. Muhammad never allowed these differences to distract him from his purpose, that was uplifting others and inspiring hope. To him, it didn't matter where people came from, how they prayed, or whether they agreed with him. The lesson feels especially important right now. Through the Muhammad Ali Index, that's a global study exploring compassion across communities, we are hearing a remarkably consistent message from people around the world. They want to connect. They are hungry to feel seen, heard, and valued. Early 2026 findings from the index show there are a growing number of stories about neighbors helping neighbors, local food drives, peer support. Community service remains strong, among the most consistently positive stories in American public life. Stories about acts of kindness grew 60% year over year between 2024 and now, while self-compassion grew 111% over the same period. At a time when outrage often dominates headlines, these findings tell us something significant. Compassion resonates deeply with people. What we are learning is real compassion is not passive. It's choosing to look suffering in the eye and not turn away. Listening, showing up, and helping another person in need in whatever way we can. Muhammad always saw the homeless person sitting alone and tattered in the shelter of a doorway. He understood he couldn't solve the bigger problem at that moment, but he could help the person in front of him. Sometimes people just need to know they are seen and somebody cares. June 3rd, Louisville, Kentucky, and across the United States, thousands of acts of compassion will take place through partnerships with Metro United Way and other organizations as part of the first annual Days of Compassion, whether by helping a neighbor, supporting a family, or spending time with someone who feels alone. These efforts may sound small, but Muhammad understood something powerful. One simple act of kindness can spark a flame of compassion that can change someone's entire day, sometimes even their entire life. Additionally, the Muhammad Ali Center, alongside partners including the PwC Foundation, is exploring how compassion-based leadership can play a greater role in education and civic life. Young people today are growing up in an environment shaped by polarization, online outrage, and social disconnection. Technical knowledge alone will not prepare them for a successful and fulfilled future. They also need human skills like empathy, listening, resilience, dignity, the ability to disagree without dehumanizing one another. If we want a future of promise, we cannot leave the next generation to learn compassion accidentally. Later in life, when Parkinson slowed Muhammad's body, it never slowed his compassion. He believed greatness is measured not simply by personal achievement, but by how we treat each other and how we lift those around us. At a moment when anger, division, and dehumanization are rewarded almost everywhere we look, this idea is not merely a personal philosophy. It is essential to being human and to building a better world for us all.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 1:31. Red Caped Korda hopes to end as U.S. hero. From Beth Ann Nichols of Golf Weekend, the USA Today Network. Kelly Korda stepped out of a courtesy car June 2nd at the Riviera Country Club wearing an oversized Nike ensemble that resembled a red cape. Underneath was a men's U.S. national team soccer jersey with the number 13. The number wasn't an ode to Alex Morgan, the soccer star who happened to be on site at Riviera. Korda, who doesn't watch soccer, didn't even realize the connection. The number 13 happens to be her favorite number because her parents, Peter and Regina, were born 13 days apart, and her 13th U.S. PGA title was a major. A lot of people think Friday the 13th or the number 13 has been an unlucky number. But I've always loved the number 13, she said. I know that the World Cup is starting next week, right? So there's no better place to kind of be patriotic than the U.S. Women's Open. The statuesque Korda wasn't wearing the cape, which is technically an oversized pleated mini dress, for her Access Hollywood hit with Kit Hoover, who stood on a box for their lengthy chat. But by then she had already made a statement. From there, Korda made her way to the interview era for the 81st U.S. Women's Open to talk about the major she wants the most. If anyone on tour should be wearing something akin to a cape, it's Korda, the woman who has won 3 times and lost to only 9 players all season. She's the undisputed favorite this week, the heavyweight who's now only 4 points shy of the LPGA Hall of Fame. Definitely don't think of myself as the face of the sport, said Korda, when asked about the overall popularity of women's golf. But I would say that it's growing. I've seen, like, from my rookie year or even just maybe 2023, it's amazing to see how many dads and little girls come out to our events. A Korda victory this week would be the biggest thing to happen to the U.S. Women's Open since Michelle Wie West won in 2014 on Pinehurst number 2. No current world number 1 has won the championship since LPGA Hall of Famer Inbee Park in 2013. Even Korda's closest rival, number 2, Gino Thithakal, is watching her closely. During her pre-tournament press conference, Thithakal said the way Korda keeps her practice light on tournament weeks, no lengthy grind sessions on the range, is impacting the tour. I feel like that's kind of inspiring a lot of players, said Thithakal, that you did all the hard work in your off week. Last year at the U.S. Women's Open at Erin Hills, Korda finished tied for second. Her best finish in 11 starts, and left Wisconsin hungry for more. Last year was just a weird year of a kind of not necessarily playing my best, but also when I did, not getting the bounces or just missing by a centimeter here and there, she said. Last year was just a weird year. I'm sorry. But I also learned a lot about myself. It made me hungrier to be in those positions. There's no better place to be than in a hunt on the back nine on Sunday at a major championship, especially at the Women's Open. It would have been a lifelong dream, but there's more chances. Corda has walked the practice rounds this week with swing coach Jamie Mulligan, a local who can offer plenty of insight on historic Riviera. Why does this championship need an American player wearing a cape? Because an American superstar hasn't hoisted this trophy in more than a decade. Of the last 9 U.S. Women's Opens, the reserved Alison Corpuz is the only American winner. The last 6 U.S. Women's Opens have been won by players from different countries, with Yuka Saso switching from the Philippines to Japan between her wins in 2021 and 24. The championship that once traded hands between the U.S. and South Korea turned into a melting pot of talent. Should Corda win the first Women's Open ever held in L.A. County, she'd be the first player to win back-to-back majors since Lydia Ko did it across 2 seasons in 2015 and 16. Evian NAA inspiration. An American hasn't gone back-to-back at the majors since Julie Inkster in 1999. When Corda won the Chevron in April, she became the first American since Megan Milan in 2004 to win a third career major. What can a heroic Corda winning the U.S. Women's Open on an iconic venue like Riviera do to elevate the women's game? It's the perfect time to find out.
Moving into the entertainment section, music, grief. Loss won't slow Shinedown singer. A short article by Melissa Ruggieri of USA Today. Brent Smith has a particular pet peeve when he stays in a hotel. Now, considering he hasn't had a mortgage in a decade because he lives in hotels, he has every reason to appreciate smooth travels. Just tell me if there is construction going on. That's all. The otherwise gregarious Shinedown frontman says. I'm not staying at a Four Seasons or a Ritz-Carlton all the time. I'm staying in a lot of extended stay places where I'm in walking distance to a grocery store. I have an incredible travel agent, Kathy May, and they often choose not to tell her. And then I arrive, and then there are bulldozers outside my room. So it's not exactly conducive to rock star lifestyle, is it? Even if I have to be up at 6 a.m., my overall body clock shuts down at 2 a.m. So, no, he says. Along with bandmates Barry Kurtz, drums, Zach Myers, guitar, and Eric Bass and Eric Bass on bass, Smith spends the majority of the year on the road. The first leg of their Dance Kid Dance tour in 2025 played 54 dates in 11 countries. Act 2 is underway in the United States and will hit Australia and Europe through November. Shinedown is never far from a Billboard chart. The band owns the record for the most number 1 hits on the mainstream rock airplay charts with 22. As 2023's Achingly Vulnerable, A Symptom of Being Human, crossed onto the pop and alternative charts, Shinedown was readying the drop of the equally thoughtful meditation on loss. 3-5-6. Let's try that again. 3-6-5. And a furious guitar rocker Dance Kid Dance. Now those songs appear on the meaty 18-track album EI-8HT, the band's 8th album. As Smith, 48, sings in 3-6-5, a lot can happen in a year. And the approachable frontman with the nomadic lifestyle shared some of his recent joyful and painful experiences. The Madison Square Garden show holds a special place in his heart. July 2025, Shinedown played Madison Square Garden for the first time. The venue, considered the pinnacle of live success, was notable enough. It was also the first time all of the band members' parents met. But that still isn't why the show will forever hold a very, very special place in his heart, Smith says. His mom, Patricia Ann Smith, had been on dialysis and cajoled her doctor in Knoxville, Tennessee, into letting her make the trip. The doctor asked, "Why do you need to go?" And my mom said, "Because my son is playing Madison Square Garden." And he was like, "Got it, go." The visit also was Patricia's first time in New York, and it would be the last. She saw her son perform. I'm always nervous and have to get through that first song. But on that particular night, I walked on stage with a different attitude, and I didn't know why, Smith says. In my mind, I was like, watch this. And the four of us were locked in out of the gate. Patricia died in January. Smith is open-hearted about his grief. I choose to understand that she's not gone, per se. She's everywhere, just not physically here anymore, Smith says. I am the man I am today because of her. All of my empathy came from her, and all of the essence of love that I have in my heart. She taught me that. Now, Smith coping with the loss of Three Doors Down singer Brad Arnold. A few weeks after Smith lost his mother, he said goodbye to his close friend Brad Arnold, singer of Three Doors Down, a man he credits as his teacher when Shinedown opened for the Kryptonite Rockers 25 years ago. We were supposed to be on that tour 2 or 3 weeks. It wound up being 9 months. Every day, man, I would ask him questions, not just about live performing, but the music industry. He never made me feel like I was bothering him. To this day, he's taught me more than anyone else. A few months before Arnold died, the pair, who had been in texting since Arnold disclosed his kidney cancer diagnosis, May of 2025, had a 2.5-hour phone conversation. We were laughing and reminiscing. As soon as he spoke, you could just tell that it was still him. But he was just so sick, Smith says. If there was ever a soul on this planet where this planet should be grateful he existed, it's Brad Arnold. And finally, Shinedown is not afraid to talk about mental health. From their first crossover hit, 2008's Second Chance, all the way through Get Up, Monsters, Daylight, and A Symptom of Being Human, Shinedown has never shied from writing about mental illness and delving into mental health conversations. It's a reciprocal openness between the band and its fans. We're very approachable, Smith says. I walk around in shorts and a t-shirt, and, it's set time at 9 o'clock. I turn it on because, it costs a lot of money to go to concerts now. And you're going to get every ounce of me for those 2 hours. Smith says Shinedown represents 2 decades of a band not afraid to talk about mental health and lovers that fans don't feel, and loves that fans don't feel like that there's a barrier. Sometimes the interaction turns heavy, but Smith is also a worthy counselor. If, somebody says to me, "You saved my life," I will say to them, "I didn't save your life. You saved your life." He says all we did was maybe help you understand that the world is much cooler with you in it.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 1:44. This is a movie review. Masters has fun flexing its 80s roots, from Brian Truitt, a columnist of USA Today. Masters of the Universe is the kind of popcorn movie that only feels right, accompanied by a big delicious bowl of outrageously sweet breakfast cereal. Directed by Travis Knight of Bumblebee fame, the fantasy action adventure brings back the 1980s heyday of He-Man with contemporary themes and flair, plus, of course, big muscles courtesy of human action figure Nicholas Galitzine. While similar Reagan-era franchises such as G.I. Joe and Transformers might have gotten their high-profile cinematic reboots earlier, Masters of the Universe, which received 3 out of 4 stars, rated PG-13 in theaters June the 5th, is the most faithful to those glorious toy box years, with playful sincerity, cheeky humor, and over-the-top goofiness. Galitzine stars as Adam, a prince of the realm of Eternia, where pretty much everybody looks jacked. As a pint-sized not warrior, if a 10-year-old, he was sent away alongside a magical powered sword to Earth when his home was attacked by the evil forces of Skeletor, played by Jared Leto. During his trippy journey, Adam lost the weapon he was supposed to protect, and now, as a grown-up working a soulless HR job, he searches for the sword that hopefully takes him to the home Adam remembers through pictures he drew as a child. It's an obsession that affects both his personal and professional lives. But Adam does find the sword, which catapults him into a quest full of punching and self-discovery that returns him to Eternia, reunites him with childhood friend Teela, played by Camila Mendes, and pits him against skull-faced villain Skeletor to save his world. And yes, if you know anything about He-Man, Adam does turn into a ridiculously buff blonde barbarian in a furry loincloth when he holds his sword aloft and yells, "By the power of Grayskull, I have the power." Try it, it's fun. While Galitzine certainly looks the part, what really works is the more subtle aspects he infuses in Adam's character, paired with Knight's vision. Like an awkward man-child, Adam is obviously really in shape under his pink shirt, even though he gets winded easily and avoids fights at first. It's not the bolder biceps, but some growing up he needs to ultimately save the day. One might not expect a well-acted adventure out of something where dudes named Fisto, Ram Man, and Trapjaw are running around, but that's definitely an area where Masters of the Universe surprises. In addition to Galitzine, Idris Elba gets to chew on scenery and a redemption arc as Teela's battle-ready dad, Man-at-Arms, and Jared Leto pulls off his most enjoyable role in years, melding bombastic theatricality and bad boss vibes as Skeletor. He and Alison Brie as his right-hand woman, Evil Lynn, completely understand the merrily malevolent assignment. Masters does take a bit to get rolling tonally. It leans a little serious in the beginning before settling into a pocket of weird, though it never goes full camp. Like 50% more camp would have been okay. It also wears its 80s influence proudly, from Brian May's shredding guitar riffs on the soundtrack and a Queen Highlander needle drop, though Flash Gordon is the film's single biggest inspiration, to paying homage to Dolph Lundgren's forgettable 1987 He-Man flick. The movie clearly is aimed at a certain audience who watched Saturday morning cartoons back in the day, and if their He-Man figure's arm broke off, would use Faker as their resident Eternian hero. If you know, you know. Yet there's enough infectious energy and heart to give this sugar bomb throwback a mainstream appeal more sizable than Galitzine's impressive deltoids.
Pink's family shares her Broadway dreams. Patrick Ryan of USA Today writes, Pink knows exactly what you're thinking. The Grammy winner, known for her mind-blowing aerial stunts, is set to host the Tony Awards at Radio City Music Hall June the 7th. That's 8 o'clock Eastern and 5 Pacific on CBS and streaming on Paramount+. With one of her favorite new shows, vampire musical The Lost Boys, also set to perform. Surely she plans to take flight with the head-banging bloodsuckers? I'm not flying with vampires, she assures us with a smirk, amid a flurry of interviews nearly 70 stories above the city at the top of the rock. Now, that said, I'm doing some things. My first thing was, of course, everyone's going to expect to see me fly. And what can we do at Radio City? I literally walk into every building, and I'm like, where can I hang from? What's strong enough? What do we test out first? Now, Pink, whose real name is Alicia Moore, may not seem like an obvious choice to host the Tony Awards, which honors Broadway's best and have been hosted by theater veterans Cynthia Erivo, Ariana DeBose, and James Corden. But two long-running shows use Pink's songs, the Jukebox Musicals and Juliet and Moulin Rouge. And growing up in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, she remembers her ER nurse mother would save her money so she and her daughter could get dressed up, go to dinner, and see a show together. It was my favorite night with my mom every year, says Pink, who's 46. We would go see Phantom of the Opera, Les Mis, La Cage aux Folles. I wanted to be Cosette by the time I was 9, or I wouldn't be cute anymore. I remember the chandelier falling in Phantom. I just loved theater and live performance. It definitely shaped what I do as Pink. Now, the pop star has flirted with the idea of performing on the main stem before. Just more than a decade ago, she got an offer to star in the Broadway production of rock musical Hedwig and the Angry Inch, for which Neil Patrick Harris won a Tony. I once had the opportunity to be the first female Hedwig, and I should have done it, she says. But it was 10 years ago, and I was probably in Germany on tour. There's been a lot of opportunities, but also I'm very codependent, or as her therapist tells her, attached. I'm very attached with my kids, says the singer, who shares daughter Willow, 15, and son Jameson, 9, with her husband, former motocross racer Carrie Hart. They come with me on tour. They come with me to catering, and we travel together. I cannot imagine 8 shows a week where I'm not telling them what to do or finding their iPad for them. I mean, stupid answer, but it's my truth. It's a real commitment. And who knows? She still might step into Hedwig's platform heels one day. Wouldn't that be amazing, she says with a grin. The 80-year-old Hedwig when my kids are in college. Right now, Pink is more focused on helping Willow achieve her own Broadway dreams. She has sung on stage and even recorded with her mom many times through the years, and the family recently moved to New York so she can continue studying acting and dance as well. Eventually, Willow hopes to enroll in the theater program at either Carnegie Mellon University or the University of Michigan. She's amazing, Pink marvels. She's more talented than I ever was. I think she's got a shot. She's in this for the long haul. She also gets straight A pluses, which makes me wonder, is she my daughter? When Pink stepped in to guest host the Kelly Clarkson Show in March, Willow appeared in a variety of segments, from interviewing cast members from Broadway's Ragtime and Maybe Happy Ending, to duetting with her mother on a ballad from The Outsiders. Pink even asked her daughter to perform together on the Tony Awards, but she's really hung up on this whole Nepo baby thing, Pink quips. It's a shame. Now, jokes aside, Pink says that seeing Willow's respect and dedication to theater has been inspiring as she prepares to host the Tonys, which will open with a 7.5-minute number featuring almost 170 people. She's all business, and I'm kind of a jokester, so I've learned to be more serious and to pay attention when people are teaching you things. I actually got to go back to my own life and rehearse for a couple of shows. My choreographer was like, "Why are you being so serious?" Well, I was like, "This is the new me. Now I'm serious in rehearsals." Although mother and daughter both live and breathe Broadway, the boys of the family haven't been converted quite yet. Carrie likes dirt, Pink says, laughing. If there's a play called Dirt, he's going to love it. Now, Jameson is a theater kid at heart. Man, he just doesn't know it yet. He's very funny, and he can sing his little butt off, but he tends to prefer Stevie Wonder runs over show tunes. Between the Tony Awards and her week-long stint hosting the Kelly Clarkson Show, there has been rampant speculation online that Pink may be preparing to take Clarkson's seat when she leaves the daytime talk show later this summer. But the charismatic singer waves off any suggestion that she's itching to host more TV gigs in the future. No, I don't know what I'm doing, she says good-naturedly. I'm just here to be Kermit the Frog and celebrate everybody else.
From the Lifeline, how was your day? Robin Quivers. Robin Quivers is officially cancer-free after battling the disease for more than a decade. The longtime Howard Stern show co-host, who was diagnosed with stage 3 endometrial cancer in 2012, made the announcement during the radio show's June 1st episode. Quivers, who is 73, said she felt like a brand new person after receiving the news, describing herself as a person who's won the lottery and can't believe their eyes when they're seeing all the numbers. Stern called it the best news ever and an unbelievable miracle. He also told Quivers, "I love you, and I am so happy for you." You've been listening to a reading of USA Today for Thursday, June the 4th, 2026 on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We read USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call 716-821-5555. And finally, your readers today have been
Ken Drost
and Jim Duffy.
Welcome summer with your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We're planning a summer bash bigger and better than ever before. It's Friday, June 26th at Creekside Banquet Facility in Grove, located at the corner of Union Road and William Street in Cheektowaga. You're invited to enjoy a buffet chicken and pasta dinner, your first drink on us, a basket raffle, and Buffalo Music Hall of Fame party band The Boys of Summer from 6 to 9 p.m. Tickets are $50 and support the 160 volunteers who read all the programming offered by Radio Reading. That's Friday, June 26th from 6 to 9 p.m. at Creekside Banquet Facility in Grove in Cheektowaga. Get your tickets now by calling 716-821-5555 extension 3 or online at nfradioreading.org. Thank you to New Era Cap Foundation, Tyverin Law, and Perry's Ice Cream for sponsoring this largest event of the year.
following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability.